Welcome to Bible Tales. We're excited to share timeless Bible stories with you, full of faith and wisdom. If you enjoy our content, please like, comment, and subscribe to support us and stay connected. Thank you for being here. Happy listening. Welcome to a story of hope, transformation, and redemption. A tale that reminds us of the unrelenting power of grace. In the bustling city of Jericho, among the crowds and commotion, one man's life is about to be changed forever. This is the story of Zacchaeus, a tax collector known for his wealth, but also for the stigma that came with his profession. Yet in a single life-altering encounter with Jesus, he discovers the true meaning of acceptance, forgiveness, and renewal. Journey with us as we dive deep into this remarkable story, where a simple act of seeking leads to salvation, and a heart once closed becomes a beacon of generosity and transformation. This is the powerful narrative of Jesus and Zacchaeus, a story of transformation. The day the tax collector's life changed forever. The streets of Jericho pulsed with life, more vibrant than usual. It wasn't just another day of trade and commerce. Today, hope was in the air. News had spread rapidly. Jesus of Nazareth, the prophet and miracle worker, was passing through. Stories of his teachings, his miracles, and his compassion had traveled faster than the wind. The blind were said to see, the lame were walking, and sinners were being forgiven. People whispered, "Could he be the Messiah we've been waiting for?" In every corner of the bustling city, people abandoned their work to catch a glimpse of him. Merchants closed their stalls. Mothers carried their children. And even the beggars on the roadside dragged themselves closer to the commotion. But not everyone dared to join the crowd. Zacchaeus stood behind the heavy drapes of his grand house, peering cautiously out the window. The faint noise of the crowd made his heart thud in his chest. He had heard of Jesus before. Stories of this man's kindness toward tax collectors and sinners intrigued him. Could he be different from the religious leaders who condemned men like Zacchaeus without hesitation? A man with a heavy burden. Zacchaeus was no ordinary tax collector. He was the chief tax collector, a man who had built his fortune by exploiting his own people. Under the Roman Empire, tax collectors were notorious for their corruption. Zacchaeus had not just collected the taxes Rome required. He had added a little extra to line his own pockets. His wealth was evident in the fine rugs on his floors, the polished silver goblets on his table, and the exquisite robes he wore. Yet all of it felt hollow. He had built a fortress of riches, but had locked himself inside it, cut off from his community. People spat his name like a curse. Mothers shielded their children from him, and his servants followed his commands out of fear, not respect. That morning, as he sipped wine from a goblet that tasted bitter despite its sweetness, Zacchaeus felt the weight of his choices more acutely than ever before. He had everything money could buy, yet he was starving for something deeper. The decision to climb. The noise outside grew louder, breaking Zacchaeus' thoughts. He couldn't resist any longer. Throwing on a fine robe, he stepped out into the streets. The scene before him was chaotic. People pressed against one another, craning their necks, pointing and whispering. He could see the ripple of excitement moving down the road as Jesus approached. But no matter how much he tried to weave through the crowd, Zacchaeus was too short to see over their shoulders. Frustrated, he glanced down the road and saw a sycamore tree. Its branches stretched out over the path where Jesus would pass. Without a second thought, Zacchaeus hitched up his robes, dignity be damned, and scrambled up the tree. His fine clothes snagged on the rough bark, and his hands stung from the effort, but he didn't care. All that mattered was seeing Jesus. From his perch among the leaves, Zacchaeus finally had a clear view of the man everyone was talking about. When Jesus called his name, As Jesus drew nearer, Zacchaeus noticed something extraordinary. The crowd around Jesus wasn't made up of the powerful or the privileged. Instead, the people closest to him were fishermen, beggars, women, and even children. Jesus walked among them, listening, smiling, and occasionally placing a gentle hand on someone's shoulder. Then, the impossible happened. Jesus stopped right beneath the sycamore tree. He tilted his head up and looked directly at Zacchaeus. The tax collector froze, his heart pounding so loudly he thought the whole crowd could hear it. "Zacchaeus," Jesus called, his voice steady and filled with warmth. "Hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." The crowd gasped in unison. Whispers spread like wildfire. Did he say Zacchaeus, the chief tax collector? He's going to stay with him. Zacchaeus didn't know how Jesus knew his name, but the sound of it on Jesus' lips stirred something deep within him. Clumsily, he climbed down from the tree, his face flushed with a mix of embarrassment and joy. "Lord," he said breathlessly, "my home is yours," the meal that changed everything. As Jesus entered Zacchaeus' house, the murmurs of the crowd grew louder. People muttered angrily, "He has gone to be the guest of a sinner." Inside the house, however, was a different scene. Zacchaeus, who had spent years fortifying his heart against guilt and shame, now felt those walls crumbling. He sat across from Jesus, who looked at him not with condemnation, but with understanding. As the meal progressed, Zacchaeus felt a growing need to unburden himself. His wealth, which had once been his pride, now felt like chains. His voice trembled as he stood up and declared, "Lord, behold, half of my goods I give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I restore it fourfold." The room fell silent. Even Zacchaeus' servants, who had never seen him display such humility, looked on in amazement. Jesus smiled, his eyes filled with approval. "Today salvation has come to this house," he said, "since he also is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek and to save the lost, a life redeemed." Zacchaeus' life was never the same after that day. He didn't just give away his wealth, he gave away his heart. The once greedy tax collector became a man of generosity and compassion. Those he had wronged were astonished when he showed up at their doors, not to demand payment, but to return what he had taken, multiplied by 4. The people of Jericho marveled at the transformation. Zacchaeus, the man they had despised, had become a living testament to the power of grace. The legacy of grace. Years later, as Zacchaeus walked through the streets of Jericho, children no longer hid from him. Instead, they ran to him, laughing and tugging at his robes. He was no longer a symbol of greed, but of redemption. In his quiet moments, Zacchaeus would often think back to the day Jesus looked up at him in the sycamore tree. That single act of grace had changed everything. It wasn't just a moment. It was the beginning of a new life.